morning, everybody. I am Lesley-Ann from Selm, and you are going to be watching my amazing interview that was filmed in my home this evening. And I would like to throw out something. After you've watched my interview, would you ever have thought that I stutter? I have a chronic stutter, but I've learned to manage it. And I'd love you to tell me afterwards if you saw or felt that I stuttered during my interview. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Connect HR Hangouts. It's your favorite host, Babi Mawela. We are back with episode 23. And as you can see, we have a nice background today. All thanks to our guest for today. House rules, if you're new here, welcome. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for your loyalty and support. In studio today, we have a very lovely guest. She goes by the name Lesley-Ann. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and you can just call me Les.
Oh, Les.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. Oh, you having us, actually. Thank you for having us over. Please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our viewers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lesley-Ann van Selm, and I'm the founder and managing director of 27-year-old NGO Khulisa Social Solutions.
Oh, lovely. And kindly just give us a background about how the company started and what inspired you to start the NGO.
So my history in social entrepreneurship actually goes back 40 years.
Okay.
I started my own company when I was 24. In those days, it was deep, rife apartheid. And so I specialized in working in what we called those days the Black people's market. So my work was all around uplifting Black people, doing Black fashion designers awards, bringing Black talent and Pantechnicons into townships. I was a PRO for Black Chain Shopping Center. So I had the most amazing life trying to navigate justice into the most unequal places. And in 1986, during the riots, I was shot at and driving into Soweto. I wasn't harmed, fortunately.
Okay.
And I went bankrupt. And as an entrepreneur, failure is very important. And experiencing bankruptcy and going through the process of having to rebuild yourself and learning about financial management is really crucial to an entrepreneur. So I've fallen many, many times in different ways. And that's what all that really goes towards building your character and building your evidence. So Khulisa started in 1997, and I'd spent many years working with cultural historian Credo Motwa.
Oh, okay.
I actually traveled the world with him, collecting African stories.
Okay.
And my obsession with him was his knowledge of African myths and legends. So together, I transcribed over 14 books, 6 of which were published, and all of them had to do with, African legends and praise songs and symbology and so on. So it was really through my relationship with Credo and the belief that our African stories needed to be brought back to our children. After the new government came in, we then piloted storytelling amongst 10 children and amongst 10 schools in Gauteng.
Yeah.
And the final school that we were asked to run our program in was at Leeuwkop Medium B prison.
Oh, okay.
So I met, after a whole process of people being assessed to join the program, I then in October, 27 years ago, walked into Leeuwkop prison and met 22 of the most exquisite young men. And that's how Khulisa started, because during that week, besides rendering the stories to the young men, I also listened to their stories. And that's when I developed a philosophy in life. Don't ask somebody what they did, but what happened to them. There's always a causal factor behind what people do. And if we can start understanding the triggers behind people's behavior, in whatever context it may be, we can really start to rebuild and heal South Africa.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And currently, what's your work dynamic? How many staff do you employ?
We've got about 280 staff.
Sure.
We've got 19 offices around the country. And most of our staff are social workers.
Okay.
Very few males, ironically,
Okay.
not intentionally. I'd like a bit of masculinity around, I must say. But so we're very much female. And our work is we work in some of the hardest to reach places.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, sometimes in mining communities and places where nobody else wants to go, we deal and work with those people who are really left behind.
Sure. And on a day-to-day, how do people get access to Khulisa, and what are the impact stories that you would like to share with us?
So unfortunately, everything's dependent on funding. Khulisa can't go anywhere unless we get funding. So we get contracts from the government or from corporates to go into the communities, and we then reach out to the communities to find out from them what their needs are, instead of assuming what they need. And based on dialogue circles and local research, we then develop interventions that are driven by the community's needs. So how we measure our impact then is gathering the data at a community level allows us to have baseline evidence of where the community is at that point in time. And then once we start intervening and implementing, we continue to research so we can actually start saying, okay, the narrative has changed here. We've managed to address the symptoms of, a lot of the symptoms, because for example, drugs or HIV/AIDS or GBVs, they're symptoms. So we're looking at what's causing this. And all the research we've done around the country and with tens of thousands of people, unless we start looking at what's really going wrong from a systemic point of view, from an ecosystem point of view, we'll never be able to address the symptoms. So, for example, I don't know how many billions have been invested in GBV by corporate and government, but nothing's changed GBV. Over the years, it's increased steadily. So again, what's causing it? And it's about inequality, unemployment, all these problems that unless we start building a healthy economy, unless we start building cohesion between community members, government, the corporate sector, we're never going to achieve anything. So we're going to constantly be plowing billions and rands into all sorts of problems and having no evidence of impact.
Sure. Those are very difficult situations that you deal with. And I can only imagine that it becomes so heavy for the social workers to deal with. How do you cope as an organization tackling such heavy and difficult socioeconomic issues?
Well, our social workers by law have to be supervised so that they can debrief. So it's not only the social workers who are carrying all the trauma, but also we work very extensively with NGO partners, and we're trying to build up the profile of the NGOs, trying to get them much more visible because they are the lifeblood of our country. And unfortunately, because they don't have funding, they don't know how to write funding proposals, they don't even have data, they remain powerless. And they're doing the work in the communities probably to a large extent because no one else is doing it. So they're doing vital work, and we are trying so hard now to start building up the belief of corporates to invest in NGOs who have been capacitated, who have got proper compliancy structures in place. So, for example, I was in Alex today, we've been working there with 18 NGOs for the past 2.5 years since the looting. And what these NGOs have done, the evidence they've created, the impact is it's mind-blowing. And maybe a further interview, we could interview some of the NGO owners and look at their challenges from an HR point of view. But what came across today was that these NGOs are doing so much in the community, are carrying all this trauma, but these NGOs themselves never have a chance to actually debrief or actually get rid of all that trauma that becomes internalized. So they can't sleep at night. They're helping the boy child, they're helping girls who are being raped, they're helping persons who have disabilities, etc., but they're never being supported. They just continue doing the work without any funding whatsoever. So again, everybody needs psychosocial support. And from our point of view, is running dialogue circles, which is a very big part of our research. Forms a huge part of people being able to offload.
No. This is really intriguing, actually. And I want to ask you, what would you like to see more from corporates as an NGO owner? What would you like to see more as a way for them to assist NGOs that are doing such great work like yourself?
Well, the corporates, if they understood the real needs at community level, for example, we've gathered all this data and able to actually show where money really needs to be invested. We could then bring together corporates who have aligned strategies in ecosystems. So, for example, if we were working in Alex, for example, we would get the corporates in Sandton to look at what their strategies are. So we could get a construction company and an investment bank and a IT company to start looking at Alex. So let's refurbish the youth development center. Let's get computers in. Let's get let's get them connected, etc. So we could start then aligning different focus areas into one ecosystem, then start seeing, because the youth center's fixed up, the youth are going there in the afternoon, so they're not committing crime because they're so bored. The schools in Alex, I mean, it's not only Alex, it's everywhere. I mean, teachers got 90 kids in one class. I mean, how can a teacher ever, and the drug abuse, the weapons that kids carry to school, again, so the education system is so broken because, you know, I think almost over 200 billion rand has been invested in education by the government in the past 2 or 3 years, but nothing's working. It's got worse. So again, we've got to say, let's stop working in silos. Let's look at where the alignment lies, but let's really look at that ecosystem and what the real fundamental needs are. And it all goes around to job creation, around, you know, entrepreneurship, around letting kids have their voices heard, and let's start addressing those systemic basic needs, and then start building up from that. And the symptoms will eventually evaporate because we'll be dealing with the real causal factors.
Sure. And what projects have you worked on that to date they still hold a special place in your heart?
Oh, my very first project I mentioned at Leopold Prison 27 years ago. I was very fortunate to have been awarded a professional doctorate in May of this year for my 40 years of experience. And I, as part of my celebration, I had a reunion with the people who've been part of my journey. And at that reunion, I had people who started Khulisa with me. And listening to their stories, and the one's a multi-millionaire and he donates money to Khulisa every year, and just listening to their stories. So it's really how, it's not what Khulisa does, because you can give people an opportunity, and if they don't want to rise to the opportunity, like you can give somebody a job or a bursary, if they don't want to study, that, you know, they're going to drop out. So it's the same as creating opportunities, but it's really about people rising to the opportunity to have their lives transformed. And especially when you come from such brokenness, if an opportunity is given to actually embrace it and to see the transformation. So that really is the transformation of communities, of people, of families, and the success stories of mentorship going back 10, 15 people who stayed in touch with mentors since they were at school, and constantly coming back and sharing their stories with us. So there's no one story, it's just transformation and how possible it is that we can transform, but it takes a village to raise a child.
True. And congratulations once again. We're so happy for you. We should celebrate with you. And so there are a lot of misconceptions about NGOs, because everyone is just looking forward to work at corporate organizations. Are there employment opportunities in the NGO sector, and how do people access employment opportunities?
So first of all, to run an NGO, it's really, really challenging.
I can imagine,
And some people start NGOs and think it's going to be easy road, but the clutter out there, and also the issues around compliancy and getting funding, and you've got to have the governance structures and the financial structures, and really to get big funding, you've got to be like absolutely squeaky clean and really, really. So it's, as you know, this has been part of our learning journey is really to make sure how, you know, we are so compliant. But in terms of employment in NGOs, unless the NGOs get funding, they're not going to be able to employ. And that's really, and effective NGOs can be a huge source of employment. And so, but it's again, like with government, you don't know if you're going to get funded the next year. So even with Khulisa, we've been funded by governments going back 18, 20 years, but the staff have been with us for some of them 16 years. Every year they have a fixed term contract. Their contracts depend on getting funding. So from January, February, there's staff looking for work because they don't know if we're going to get funding from the government again. And the instability, the insecurity it creates, and it's so traumatic. Come March, or, you know, even now, in Gauteng, we didn't even know that we were going to get funded until the end of May this year.
Yeah.
So everybody was retrenched, offices cut down, closed down, and then suddenly the funding comes and you've got to reopen the offices and everybody's reemployed, and it's very, very traumatic. So, but properly funded, properly run NGOs can be, as I said, a huge source of employment, and bringing in the right people to run the right type of work in NGOs. You can have researchers, impact consultants, the wealth of knowledge and the knowledge that's available in the marketplace of people who've left the country or people who would love to work.
Yeah.
With purpose, love to come to work every day and say, I'm a financial manager or a CA, I'm working for an NGO, I've got purpose, I've got a purpose in doing research or doing political studies. It's just that sense of gratification working in the NGO sector, knowing you are empowering people. We could really shift the entire employment landscape in our country and bring back a lot of people who left because they were just tired of the rat race and the dog-eat-dog environment.
True. Ladies and gents, let's just go to a short ad break. We will be right back.
Franklin Covey South Africa actually does is really around leadership development.
Okay.
And developing leaders at all levels, instilling greatness, instilling habits of effectiveness in people, which I thought, it's funny how the universe works. To your point, that when you get into certain spaces, you then start attracting like-minded people. You start attracting those things that you really needed, because what I really needed at that time to boost my confidence and to boost my self-esteem, again, because as you can understand, coming out of a corporate environment, then you're on your own. Sometimes your self-esteem can take a knock, right? And I was like, oh, okay, actually there's someone who believes that, someone who holds such a big brand, they believe that I'm doing great work. But what also stood out for me was, I really needed to polish up my leadership, some of my leadership traits as well, in terms of letting go of some of self-limiting habits, self-limiting thoughts, self-limiting behaviors. How do I show up in my full self? And the more I got into the Franklin Covey content, it's, when you get those aha moments and you get that thing that says, you know what, I'm in the right space. And I'm just really particularly excited that, more and more people then will get to, experience the great work that Franklin Covey does, because it really, one is a confidence booster. Yes, that's what it has done for me, because people are like, oh, actually you associated with this big brand. Yeah, then immediately that lifts your self-esteem, that lifts your confidence, but also knowing that I can help other people, right, who may be.
Welcome back, everybody. We are still with Les, and we are tackling a number of NGO issues, socioeconomic issues. If you have just tuned in, welcome. We are about to dive deeper into other issues that we are currently facing as employers and employees. So, Les, I wanted to then ask, you have quite a large staff complement. In NGOs, how does the HR processes, work? And are there any challenges that you currently face? How does it work in general?
Oh, challenges, of course. HR equals challenges.
Yeah.
So it's really about the effective leadership. And I've got how we structure our companies, we've got provincial managers.
Okay.
And then we've got managers who are supervisors in charge of offices. And I'm very fortunate that I've got very, very good leadership at a provincial level. And I don't ever get involved in any matters unless I need to.
Yeah.
And it's normally a case if there's support needed or innovation needed, etc. So we have an HR person internally who does the contracts and leave, etc.
okay.
And then we have an external HR person who will deal with any other training, policy and procedure training, etc.
Okay.
But it's not a high level thing, and we actually are really keen to link up with a company that will be able to provide us with a bit of HR technology, and it would change the landscape of Khulisa, and we'll be able to really show how such technology can streamline the business.
Yeah.
So this is an ad break now. So that's really, and it's really about having the right people in the right place. But of course, we had lots of challenges of staff, especially as I said towards the end of their contract.
Yeah,
because our work at a local level is very much funded by government. We have strong deliverables where we got to reach. They're pushing numbers, not so much impact. And we're trying to change that to say, rather than have impact than having to do 800 children doing the school holiday program. So it's hard work for our social workers to deal with that amount of kids, and sometimes I worry about the numbers being pushed, because obviously the government's got to prove that they're reaching so many people every year.
Yes.
And I'm pleased that we have managed now to bring in data management tools where we can actually show the impact as a result of school holiday program developed in accordance with what the children have told us they need, and then be able to show how the children have responded to storytelling and journalism and so on.
So I'm curious, how do you identify areas that you need to go and visit and, try and make an impact and find out what the socioeconomic issues are? How do you identify?
So everywhere needs interventions. Everywhere. But as I said, we have to go where the funding is. So whilst we might go into one geographic area, we try to extend our reach in that ecosystem by then going to corporates in that area saying, look, we only funded for school holiday programs. We'll then go to corporates and say, right, the school needs to be, renovated, or we need a playground to be fixed. And that's where we expand our reach within that ecosystem.
Okay. And I want to get to know you more. What are your qualifications, and where did you study, and did you have to study for what you do, or did all of this find you? How did it come about?
So I'm a doctor. I mean, can you believe it? And I barely passed matric. Really, I had ADHD before it was even invented. Now, I was in such trouble all my years at school. I barely made it, really. And I did two courses in short story writing, and that's all. And it really, everything I've done has been gained through experiential learning, making mistakes, learning, applying that knowledge, applying your learnings, and eventually, when you've done so much, you develop such a sense of intuition.
True.
And it's now I can because of having been the millions and millions and millions of people that Khulisa has worked with over the years, and literally it is millions, and the scenarios I've dealt with, the different demographics, the circumstances, the stories I've heard is being able to walk into a room and seeing what's wrong, being able to read if people are authentic or not, if something's viable or not. And it's just, you can just cut through the chase, and that just comes with pure gut feeling. But that comes with wisdom, not with, you can't study that.
True. You can't
get all the degrees in the world, but if you haven't applied it. And it's so interesting that we work with a lot of universities, and we've got a partnership with one particular university now. And I was there last week and presented our whole approach towards social cohesion. And I had all these professors and the deans from the different faculties there. And when I spoke to them, they were saying, I can't, we study this, but we don't really realize how it can be applied at grassroots level. So it's almost like matching all this academia with opportunities and experience where we can really merge the two worlds. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. And I want to find out from you, what is your advice to people? What is it that you would like to leave with our guests, so that when they think of you, this is what they remember?
When they think of me? Okay. Well, I'm not sure. So again, going back is learning to understand that people don't do anything without there being a trigger behind it. So, for example, we don't want to have anything to do with people who've been in prison because they say that you lock them up and throw them. But you don't realize that children in our country are going through the most horrendous circumstances, and it's called adverse childhood experiences. And what our children go through without fathers, living in environments where there's 16 people in a shack, where there's no food, where there's insecurity, where there's substance abuse, where the schooling's so bad, where there's no friends, there's no role models. Children are being framed at a young age to go out and look for love in the wrong places.
Sure.
So all the research we've done of young men who've been in prison, they are not, we are the criminals. They are the victims because they've been brought up with such adversity. They haven't had the chance, and they're not given the chance to actually realize who they are and self-actualize and play and have fun. So people end up by committing new crime and get involved in drugs. They go to prison. They're in prison for 10 years because there are no other jobs. They relapse back and they go into prison. And we judge them, but we don't realize there's a story behind every story. And if in South Africa we can just not look at somebody who's homeless and say, oh, he's useless, whatever. Let's start listening to each other. Let's start asking each other, what happened to you? Why are you here? What can I do? And if we can start being empathetic and listen and understanding where we all come from, we can start synchronizing our emotions, and we can start leveraging on this beautiful Ubuntu spirit that's so dormant in this country now, unfortunately. If we can bring out this Ubuntu and our rainbow that's faded, it's invisible. If we can all bring back this Ubuntu-ness in South Africa, and I know from first-hand experience the love that Black people in this country have, the capacity to love, but we got to rekindle that hope. And so that my story is, let's just talk to each other. Let's understand where we're coming from. Let's hold our hands and see if we can't walk forward. United we stand together.
Thank you. That is amazing. And where do people find you on social media to get a hold of you if they need to? Or are those details?
No, just Khulisa Social Solutions. Just go onto the internet and look for Khulisa. Go onto LinkedIn, find me. Go onto Facebook. We're very visible.
Okay, Khulisa Social Solutions. You heard it for yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of our episode. Thank you, Les, for your time.
Thank you for being here in the middle of winter. My God,
yes.
wow!
But we're nice and warm.
Thank you.
We're nice and warm. Please tell us what you think about this episode on the comment section. We will be in touch. Stay blessed, stay warm. We will see you next time on episode 24.